I got the divorce papers in an email while I was halfway around the world, staring at a screen in a dusty outpost. 25 years of what I thought was a rock-solid marriage dissolved in a single attachment that felt colder than the desert nights. My name is Robert Harrison, and I'm 62 now, looking back on it all with the kind of clarity that only comes after the dust is settled. But back then, at 58, I was still a master sergeant with the 101st Airborne, grinding through my final tour in Baghdad. The heat was relentless, the sand got into everything, and the days blurred into one long vigil of patrols and briefings. I'd been out there for 5 months when that message pinged in from Susan. The subject line read, "Time to move forward," as if we were discussing a business deal instead of unraveling a life together. Inside, it was brutally concise. She'd filed the paperwork, emptied our joint accounts, and already had her new companion, Mark, making himself at home in our Portland house. I remember sitting there in the dim light of the comms tent, the hum of generators in the background, reading those lines over and over. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for what felt like hours, but in the end, I typed back just one word: noted. No accusations, no desperate pleas to reconsider, just a quiet acknowledgement. Because even then, in the midst of the chaos overseas, I knew begging wouldn't change a thing. Military life had taught me that much. Face the facts, adapt, and move on. That night, after signing off, I stepped outside into the cooling air, the stars sharp overhead like they never are back home with all the city lights. I didn't tell a soul in my unit. We were a tight-knit group, brothers in arms who'd seen each other through ambushes and long nights. But personal stuff like this, you kept it locked down. Ramirez, my closest buddy in the squad, noticed something off during chow the next day. He was a lanky guy from Texas, always quick with a joke to lighten the mood, but he could read people like a map. "You look like you've been chewing on gravel, Sarge," he said, sliding his tray next to mine. I shrugged it off with just some home front static, and he let it drop. That's how it was with us vets. We respected the boundaries, knowing everyone carried their own load. Truth be told, the email didn't blindside me as much as it should have. The warning signs had been stacking up for over a year, subtle at first, like distant thunder on the horizon. Susan and I had met at a community potluck back in 2005, right after my second deployment to the Middle East. I was home on leave, crashing with an old Army pal in Portland, trying to shake off the adrenaline of combat. She was there with a dish of homemade potato salad, finishing up her certification in medical administration. She had this warm smile that cut through my fatigue, and we hit it off, talking about everything from local hikes to her dreams of a stable life, away from the unpredictability of her retail job. 8 months later, we were married in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with a backyard reception where friends toasted to our future. She switched to reception work at a local clinic, saying it was steadier hours, less stress on her feet. I thought we'd built something enduring, a partnership that could weather my absences. But as the years wore on, the strain showed. I'd been in the service since I was 18, enlisting right out of high school in Ohio, drawn to the structure and purpose after a chaotic childhood with parents who argued more than they talked. The Army became my family, my career, not just a job, but a calling. Susan, though, came from a different world. Her father was an accountant, her sister a teacher. No one in her family had worn the uniform. She supported me at first, proud of the ribbons and commendations, but the deployments chipped away at that. I'd been to Iraq 3 times, Afghanistan twice, each tour leaving me a little more worn, a little quieter. When I'd came home, she'd be waiting with a home-cooked meal, but over time, those reunions felt forced. She'd ask me about my days, but her eyes would glaze over at the details. "When are you going to think about retiring?" she'd say, her voice tinged with frustration. I understood the loneliness, the worry every time the news flashed reports of attacks. But at 58, with 25 years in, retirement loomed anyway. I just wasn't ready to hang it up yet. The real shift started around 2022, when I was prepping for this last tour.
Susan began pulling away in small ways that added up. She'd skip our ritual evening walks around the neighborhood, claiming exhaustion from work. The clinic kept her late more often, or so she said, handling paperwork that couldn't wait. Then came the yoga classes 3 evenings a week. She'd come home smelling of lavender oil, but never sweaty or flushed like she'd actually broken a sweat. New clothes appeared in her closet, stylish blouses, fitted jeans, things she claimed were on sale for a confidence boost. New friends I'd never met started popping up in her stories, book club buddies, a hiking group from work. Her phone got a new passcode, and she'd angle the screen away when texts came in. I noticed. Of course I knew. How could I not? But confrontation wasn't my style. My father, before he passed, had drilled into me. Think twice, speak once. Be certain before you act. So I watched, and I prepared. Quietly, without fanfare. First, I rented a small safe deposit box at a bank across town, away from our usual branch. Into it went the important papers: our marriage certificate, my birth records, the deed to our house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch that we'd bought in 2012 on a quiet cul-de-sac in Portland's suburbs. The VA loan was in my name alone, a benefit from my service, but I'd added Susan to the title years ago, figuring it was the right thing for a married couple. I also stashed my parents' heirlooms: Dad's pocket watch from his factory days, Mom's silver necklace she'd worn every Sunday. Nothing extravagant, but pieces of my history I wasn't willing to lose. Then I opened a separate checking account at another bank, diverting a portion of my military pay, 10% at first, enough to build a buffer without raising alarms. If things went south, I wouldn't be starting from scratch. The night before I shipped out, Susan drove me to the airport. Her hug was brief, her words rote: "Stay safe out there." No tears, no lingering embrace. Her eyes were dry, focused on the traffic ahead. I boarded the plane with a knot in my gut, but I pushed it down. Hope, as stubborn as it is, lingered. Out in Baghdad, the days were a grind of routine. Dawn patrols through crowded markets, briefings on intel, the constant vigilance for threats. It kept my mind occupied, but in the quiet moments, doubts crept in. 2 weeks after the divorce email, another blow landed. I was in the mess hall, fork midway to my mouth, when my phone buzzed with a bank notification. Logging in, I saw the damage: a fresh withdrawal of $72,000, leaving our joint checking at a pathetic $18.42. Our savings account, the $38,000 nest egg we'd scrimped for over the years, vacations we never took, emergencies we prepared for, was zeroed out, transferred to an unknown account. I set my tray aside, the food suddenly unappetizing, and stared at the screen. How had I missed this? But I knew. Deployments meant spotty access, trust placed in the wrong hands.
That evening, from the base's secure phone center, I called our bank. The rep, a young woman with a sympathetic tone, confirmed the pattern. Small transfers starting months ago, escalating after I left. "We'll flag it for fraud review," she said, but I could hear the bureaucracy in her voice. Hanging up, I leaned against the wall, watching younger soldiers chat with their families on video calls. Kids waving, wives blowing kisses. My world felt like it was crumbling, while theirs spun on. Ramirez found me there later. "Heard you skip seconds of dinner. Spill it." I hesitated, but he'd earned my trust, pulling me from a dicey street skirmish weeks earlier. "Susan's cleaned out the accounts and moved some guy into our place. Divorce papers came last week." He didn't offer platitudes, just clapped my shoulder. "What's the play?" "Not sure yet. Holler if you need backup." Sleep evaded me that night. Instead, I fired up my laptop and logged into our home security system, a setup I'd installed myself during my last leave, with cameras inside and out feeding to a cloud account. Susan must have forgotten I had remote access. The feed loaded, and there it was. A strange SUV in the driveway, a man I didn't recognize, tall, slick hair, casual clothes, walking our lab, Max, on the leash I'd bought. He poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the faded army emblem, and settled on the couch in the living room I'd painted myself. And Susan, laughing in the kitchen, the one I'd renovated with new cabinets and tile during a rare month off. It wasn't jealousy that surged through me, it was a cold resolve, like flipping a switch from emotion to execution. I closed the app, grabbed a notepad, and started listing steps. Contact Tom, my old Army buddy who'd gone into law after retiring. Double-check VA loan terms. Secure my pension accounts. Request emergency leave if things escalated. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was a mission. At 0500 the next morning, before the sun baked the base, I emailed Tom. Urgent legal advice needed. Discreet. His reply came swift. Secure line, stat. We talked for an hour, his voice steady over the crackling connection. Sounds like fraud potential. Gather what you can. Statements, SIG samples. I'll start digging. By the time I hung up, a plan was forming. No rash moves, no heated calls, just patience, evidence, letting her choices unravel themselves. 2 months later, I touched down stateside, unannounced. No call to Susan, no heads up. I rented a car at the airport and checked into a no-frills motel on the edge of Portland, the kind with thin walls and vending machines that hummed all night. It smelled of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, but it was anonymous. I met Tom the next day at a diner 15 miles out, a greasy spoon with booths that had seen better days. He slid into the seat across from me, looking every bit the civilian lawyer now. Suit, briefcase, a far cry from our shared foxholes. "You look beat," he said, signaling for coffee. "Feel it," I replied. He handed over a thick folder. Bank records, deed copies, loan docs. Then the kicker, a refinance application dated 3 months back, authorizing $280,000 against the house equity. My signature stared back, but it wasn't mine. The loops were off. The middle initial J instead of T. Forgery, Tom confirmed. And her boyfriend, Mark Ellis? Record includes fraud from 19, couple DWIs. Not his first rodeo. I leaned back, processing. So she forges my name, cashes in on the house, drains the savings, then files for divorce. That's not just leaving, that's calculated. Tom nodded. Options depend on what you want. Revenge or justice? I thought of our years together. The good ones early on. Weekend drives to the coast, quiet Christmases with just us and the dog. But betrayal like this? What's mine, legally, and consequences for her actions? He grinned faintly. Then we play smart. The plan unfolded methodically. Next day I drove past our house, parking a block away under a canopy of oaks. Mark's SUV was gone, but Susan's sedan sat in the drive. I watched for an hour, tempted to march up and demand answers, but stuck to the script. Instead, I headed to the bank, met with the loan officer, a nervous type named Jenkins, glasses slipping down his nose. I presented my military ID, driver's license with my real signature, the forged docs side by side. His face drained of color. "This is serious. We'll report it." "I have already filed a police report," I said calmly. That night, Susan texted, "Who's been poking around at the bank? Mark heard rumors." I didn't reply. Silence was my weapon. 2 days later, at the county clerk's office, I filed to contest the refinance on fraud grounds, locking any property changes without my sign-off. Tom called that afternoon. "Mark got nabbed driving your truck, suspended license from those DWIs. Impounded it, and guess what? Prescription pads from Susan's clinic inside, some filled out." My stomach tightened. "Stolen?" "He looks like. Cops are on it." This was ballooning beyond a bad breakup. Part of me, the old protective instinct, wanted to warn Susan, old habits from years of shielding her from my deployment stresses. But then I replayed the cam footage. Her laughter with Mark in our home, my life casually discarded. No, this path was set. Met with the bank's fraud investigator next morning. Wilson was a short, world-weary man with a perpetual coffee stain on his tie and eyes that had seen too many scams. He sighed, fanning docs across his desk. "Deployed spouses are prime targets. Opportunity knocks when one's away. Funds are frozen, but half the refinance cash is already spent." "Where?" I pressed. He hesitated,
then angled his monitor. Transfers to Gary Thompson. Not supposed to share, but it's your equity. I noted the name, called Tom immediately after. Run Gary Thompson. An hour later. Realtor, specializes in fast cash sales. Linked to Mark in 3 prior deals. Pattern, targets military families, undersells homes for quick flips, they split commissions. The realization hit like a sandstorm. This wasn't impulsive infidelity. It was a scheme, preying on vets like me. Away serving, homes vulnerable. Others hit? At least 3 I found. Women in divorce or alone during tours. Homes sold cheap to Thompson's buyers. Rage simmered, not just for me, but for those families. What now? I've tipped the FBI. Crosses states, involves VA loans, military personnel, their wheelhouse. That night, in the motel with a lukewarm beer, I pondered Susan's role. Had she been conned by Mark or complicit? Did it matter? Texts from her piled up. Bank's talking fraud. Mark's arrested. What's happening? I stared, then typed, "Who's Gary Thompson?" Ellipses danced. Then, "Not what you think." Followed by, 140K transfers. House listing? No reply for minutes. Then, "Please call. We can fix this." I powered off the phone, lay back on the stiff bed listening to traffic outside. Forgiveness? Maybe someday, but not yet. FBI agents Mills and Harper met me at their field office the next day. A sterile building with buzzing fluorescents and endless hallways. They recorded my statement, pored over Tom's research, and asked me to fill in the blanks.
Your case fits a pattern, Mills explained. A sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. Intent, organization, upgrades to conspiracy. Susan? Harper, the older agent with a gravelly voice, exchanged glances. Determining involvement. Any red flags from her? I recalled her pushing to downsize 6 months back, claiming we were house poor, despite manageable payments. Around when she met Mark, I think. They noted it, asked about finances, timelines. Don't confront anyone, Mills warned as I left. Let us build it. Susan texted again that evening. Meet at Waterfront Park tomorrow? Need to talk face-to-face. Showed Tom over breakfast, eggs and hash at the diner. Trap, he said. Skip it. I agreed, but used the time. While she waited at the park, we staked out the house from across the street, coffee in hand. At 9:45, Susan left, heading parkward. 20 minutes later, a car with a realtor logo pulled up. Gary Thompson, stepping out to shake Mark's hand. They entered. Follow? Tom asked. No need. I pulled up the home cam app, audio on. Thompson. List by week's end. Buyer lined up, cash, 380K ask, settle at 350K. Mark. Husband stirring trouble. Thompson. Vets always bark. Deployments keep him busy. He'll settle. Tom recorded. I forwarded it to Mills with Live Now. 30 minutes later, FBI vans swarmed. From our vantage, we watched agents cuff Thompson and Mark, haul out boxes. Susan arrived mid-chaos, hands to mouth, face ashen. Mills called. Tape nails fraud, conspiracy, wire fraud, statement needed. Of course. Your ex is here, upset. I watched Susan on the lawn, agents questioning her. 13 years, wait, no, 25 in my story, of shared life eroded to this. What about her? Depends on her story and yours. The federal case accelerated. Mark and Gary plea bargained, fingering each other and accomplices in a multi-state ring hitting 11 vet families. Sentences? Mark 8 years, Gary 12 for fraud, ID theft, conspiracy. Susan claimed Mark duped her. I was hiding assets, his refinance, his fix. Evidence muddied it, but she settled. Full restitution, waived house and pension claims, admitted forgery. I declined pressing charges.
Divorce finalized 6 months post-email. No fault, clean slate. A year on, I sold the house. Ghosts lingered in every room. Proceeds bought a snug cabin near Boise, Idaho. 2 bedrooms, 15 acres of pine and meadow, a babbling creek out back. No close neighbors, just peace. Retired after 25 years. Pension sufficient. Took up woodworking, crafting tables, chairs for locals. Hands busy, mind eased. Adopted Riley, a mutt from the shelter, for company on trails. Heard Susan moved to Ohio. Back with family, clerking at a doctor's office. No hate remains. Time softens edges. One evening, a letter arrived from a Navy wife in San Diego. FBI shared your name. You exposed the scam that almost took our home. Thank you. Pinned it to the fridge, a reminder amid quiet days.